this field, and some of them just choose it. So recently I met a person. He wrote the very great book called the Web Accessibility Cookbook, and we'll be looking into that. And he just was in the field of accessibility because it should happen. It is not like he had some connection and he had someone in his family or something like that to make it, because it's a thing that we all must do. For me, it is like I grew up next to a mother who was teaching kids between 2 to 14-year-olds, and they were people with special needs in the category that they were partial or total deafness. So I went to this school just before coming here to San Francisco. I have never been to anywhere outside of India. It was the first time, and I just go to this teacher and talk about how can I make things more accessible to these people, or how can I just help or volunteer as a techie. So she tells me that think of a 15-year-old as a 5-year-old and how you can just make something creative. Maybe in tech you can just make some small game or something like that, and you can just have them see it. Maybe they will not like it, and just iterate and iterate, and it's a never-ending process. So that's what user experience is. So the point of this whole conversation slide is that I do not want this slide to get exhausted. I want us to talk. So we will be successful if I do not come to the last page of the slide till the end of the session. That's the point. So yeah, has anybody anything to talk about accessibility? I want you guys to talk first and just take the lead. Yeah, please.
Wait, not in this context, but I was a math teacher and I had a student with Down syndrome. So I was teaching him how to count. After how to count is how to add one, because it's just counting, basically. How to add two. And when we reached the point to count three, he was having problems switching to the next decena, tens, like 19 plus 3.
Yeah.
Going to the 20 something answer.
Yeah.
Was problem. I had the number board there. He was having problems changing lines. So looking for solutions, it happened that I went to Japan. I bought a Japanese abacus that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is another thing, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, cha cha cha. On the airplane back, I was reading the instructions.
Yeah.
So I gave him the abacus and we started again counting. 1, 2, 3, ta ta. Because he had to learn the mechanics of that. So we started again with counting. Then we started again with +1. So 7 plus 1, he had to put the 7 at 1 and then write the answer.
Yeah.
Then 2.
Then do it.
Then I didn't teach him 3. Like a year after, he was doing additions, 3-digit additions with the abacus. He found out whatever. I had another student with this disorder that they lose their mind, they're thinking of another thing. But I mean, he was very bright. He was like, by that time he was 14 years old doing high school math.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why he was like doing like this all the time in class, not paying attention, because he was so bright that the class was boring. So he was behind this student when he was doing the additions, and you would see the movement of his hand, and he was, what is he doing? He's getting it right. He was amazed of what this boy was doing, and I don't know. I just taught him how to add up to 2, and he figured things out by his own. So that is one thing. Because the disability doesn't need to be the people with the glasses, or it can mean this, well, you have whatever sequence of letters the psychologists give you, it's also considered a disability on certain situations, right? It's so it's you just need to look what works for the person. Some people are kinetic, some people are um,
Is intellectual.
they get things more by listening, and some the kinetic is because of movement, like this person with Down syndrome. Some people learn because of they listen, and some people learn because of what they see.
Yeah.
Visual people.
Visual.
So you just, as a mentor, you just have to figure out what they are. That's why written communication, visual communication, it's good.
It is.
And of course, the mechanics exercises.
Yeah, so whenever we evolve into tech, we do see the real life instrument. So if you see a switch of a light bulb, then you have switches in your front end in HTML. So the way that we design something, it should be corresponding to something that exists in the real space, and they are able to adapt it. And not just, I would say that everyone has something in, because the world is neurodiverse. So I would talk about that 1.3 billion people, or 16 to 20%, this is from the World Web Consortium, have a significant minor or major special need occurring in the world today. So it's like 1 in every 5 has something, and we're talking about the various categories, the various levels that exist. But yeah, so it's like we have to build something for a global audience today. So if you look at YouTube, then you have something like captions that are beneath it, and it like helps you a lot if you are watching a video which is of a different language or a different accent. You're not able to pick up the pace of that language or something like that. But now think of a person who just cannot hear as a partial or total deafness. For him, that subtitle is a need. For him, he needs that to be able to use it. And in our case also, let's say we are at a library and we just forgot our earphones, we just don't have it at the moment, or there is something wrong with the speakers and we just want to watch a video, then we would be needing it too. So the way that we build thing is that we are providing a necessity for some, but it is a feature for everyone. And I know that for developers, they say that, yeah, we have to do something extra, they just don't want to do it, but it's just really put out for the best. So everyone should be making things more accessible. And if someone has just done something like that, I would want you to communicate about something that you have built. And maybe, yeah, please do.
Yeah, no offense from across Asia, but I'm working for Archive, the preprint server. So we are well aware of this problem. Our web, of course, by US requirements, our websites have to be accessible. But that is not really a solution, because the PDFs we are shipping. I mean, I'm not sure everyone knows Archive. Archive is the oldest preprint server. We have about a few million articles of research. The biggest research on LLM, for examples, are first and often only published on Archive. And so we have started some 1.5, 2 years ago to work with handicapped researchers. And so what we have shipped out like a few months ago is that for every new article, we provide also an HTML version. The reason is that PDFs are, as they are today, are not accessible. Whatever your government says about it should stay with PDF 1.7 accessibility, this is complete rubbish. Even Adobe agrees that PDF 1.567, the accessibility is completely useless. You can take a screen reader and read out the PDF, and it is a huge disaster. So PDF UA2 is working on this. I'm also in the PDF Association for standardizing this. There is a lot of work, but in generally, I see still a lot of, especially governmental organizations, shipping out PDFs, and PDFs are hugely problematic from the accessibility standpoint. So on Archive, we are backfilling now all the catalog back to the 1980s, but that takes a lot of time and costs, because that runs in the cloud and costs us a lot of money. So new articles and the last few years are now completely available in HTML, and that had, so from personal experience and from feedback from researchers all over the world, it was a resounding success. So what I want to say is that if you are in a situation or in an environment or an organization that produces documents, think about not using only PDF, because it is, even if it says PDF 1.7 accessible, it's not really accessible.
Yeah, it's not. That's pretty great point that you put out. Anyone else who has just developed something that they may find, yeah, please do.
I have not built anything, but this is something I use. So like I self-identify myself as somewhere on the dyslexic spectrum, and the text information is hard for me to read. So I discovered this font called Open Dyslexic, and I use it now for all my desktop needs. And a lot of sites don't support you to change the font for reading. So like some of the browsers have this read mode which might support that. So that is helpful in that. But as a developer, I feel like most of the documents backdates to like early websites, which is really hard to read for me. So like having tools or plugins like this, which makes things a little bit easier, skimmable actually. Like I don't read through things, I skim through things too. So building something like that could help a lot of people in that.
Definitely.
And it's not even like that I have a huge disability or something. It's just, as she said, it's a learning thing. So you don't need to have a visible disability to.
It could be any kind, and it's just a neurodiverse universe, as I said.
Yeah.
So anyone else who wants to just bring out any, please.
I just wanted to, because to make my notes make sense, I'm calling this the curb cut effect, because it's a classic example of you make the curb cuts for people using a wheelchair and people with a heavy package, people with a stroller, people who like have other minor mobility issues, also like who don't technically need the curb cut, still have quality of life improvement.
Definitely, we just built for, say, a necessity for somewhere, but it is a feature for all, so everyone just gets a good thing. And you just talked about scanning, that you just scan or skim through things. So there is a very good concept called scanning, modeling. I don't know if it's visible or I'm just writing it too low. So these are some 3 concepts, and if you have heard of it, just feel free to just share, or I can just give you a story time for this, and I can just talk about it. So no one, okay. So it's basically like when we visit a website, let's say I want to do something like I want a converter or something to just convert a PNG to, let's say, a WebP for compression. Then what I will do is I will just Google search, I will try to find something that my main intention is just compresses directly, doesn't ask me for a login, and sure as hell doesn't ask me that I should just give my credit card to it. So that's the very basic thing. So I would just scan through some of the websites, and there's this thing that I would just muddle through it, I will just struggle through it, I will just try to find what I want. And the final thing is, when I get it, the particular site, I will be satisfied, which means that again, if I need it, I will be visiting the same website, just cutting through all the things, even if there is a better one available, which was not visible to me. So yeah, there is this thing that we in user experience have to make websites and just go backwards for this and just make something that is easily scannable, or the thing is like directly available, that you don't have to sign up, or is not a credit card that is required, and it directly just satisfies you. It just gives you the thing that you want. And if we just track back, then if we take care of this, it is much more accessible, it is much more user friendly. So yeah, if someone just finds it more and want to elaborate on it, please feel free to do so. It's just, there's no wrong answer in this. Anyone? Oh, there's
So I'm not sure if I would like to mix usability and user interface with accessibility for a handicapped person, because I mean, what is usable for me as a fully sighted and hearing and seeing, like everything, this is completely different from what people that need accessibility access have. So I wouldn't want these two to muddle completely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, definitely. Because for accessibility, we would be carrying it out in a way that it is, I would say, much important to all the types of users and not just be a user interface thing. And yeah, I was just looking for what do we have next. Just, can someone just try to think what this particular representation means, and if someone just know about this equity versus equality thing, just feel free to talk about it, and then I can just take lead.
So equality is basically giving everyone the same thing, and equity is trying to accommodate to their needs so they have the same experience.
Yeah, definitely. I do see that many of you are not talking. I would just want you to be a bit more interactive. It just helps out a lot. That's the whole point of the session, because when I came here, I was introvert. I chickened out and everything. I didn't want to talk. But yesterday I had this particular thing called the video shoot, where just Mary and I were talking, and she told me that you need to talk out. That's not how it works, because in the later time when you are just coding behind your laptop, you're just doing 20% of the work. The rest 80% is presentation of your work, because if you don't do it, someone else might take your credit. So please feel free to just talk, because there's nothing wrong. The worst you will do is just make fun of yourself in front of others. That's totally okay. So if someone wants to talk, just anything wrong, anything that they had for breakfast, something like that. Just feel free to talk. It's not so okay. So yeah, I will be talking about this particular thing. Is that as can you just please tell me your name?
Asta.
As Astha said very clearly, that you should accommodate for people in this equity thing. So it's just like, why shouldn't I just create the same thing and just feel that everyone will be able to use it? It's not the case. You have a neurodiverse audience, and you will have to look from the eyes of a, I would say, a user who might be struggling to do this. So there was a thing when they were designing refrigerator designs. So there was this woman called Patricia Moore, and I'm not sure if it is the 90s or it's the 80s, but there was this thing that people were trying to figure out various designs for this refrigerator. And yeah, it is a story time right now, so because you guys are not talking. So she was just trying to make it that how can I make this refrigerator for work for all type of people? Is the lock and key mechanism okay or not? And she was told by her company that we don't design for them. And she was just shocked to hear that they're just designing for people who are, I would say, pretty much able to just use it, but not for everyone. And that I would say, if someone tells this to me at my company, I would just not be able to tolerate that, because how can you not think of designing for everyone? So she took her own time, and in her own time she did a few things. She just tried to tighten her arm near this, and just she tried to open it, or she just tied herself to a wheelchair and just tried to open it. She tried a lot many things to be able to create that kind of a design that we see right now in our refrigerator. It is designed with empathy, and whenever you open it, you can just feel the empathy that Patricia Moore has given to the world, that everyone will be able to use it easily. So, yeah. Anyone, I feel that this is a very awkward silence. Yeah, please.
Yeah, so one of the what we try to do is to like for color CSS, we use like Wave. Have you guys heard of it? So to accommodate like people who has like color blindness or color impairment. So I was wondering, like, that's the only thing probably we do for our software, but if there's like anything else you guys do in addition to like matching colors and stuff like that, like other techniques you guys use for web applications.
Like probably try out to read it with a screen reader.
Yeah.
That is one of the best tests. This is very easy to test yourself. You can see, does it So the point is that if the website is not properly made, if it's a web app, I assume, because it says CSS, and the screen reader might jump in an illogical way, so not in the way you are supposed to read the page, right? And so that is something that would probably help most people just check that the screen reader reads the page in a reasonable way. And then if you have other things as text, like tables, images, always add, that is also checked by screen reader, add alt text, or for tables, add a description of what is in the table. There are nowadays also actually good tools that you can create tables and graphics in a way via SVG, and so the screen readers can actually allow you to go over the axis, for example, of a graph, or if you have bar charts, go over the bar charts one by one and read you out the numbers. That is super nice if you do this. This is, I mean, that's like the Alpha Plus. But I mean, testing with a screen reader, I mean, CSS checks are good, screen readers are good. There is a very good page, I have to check it, and this is, I have to check where it's fine, where a researcher lists things that are good for checking to make websites or web applications accessible.
Has everyone heard of WCAG?
WCAG,
Yeah.
CAG, yeah.
So there's this WCAG contrast checker that you also told that we have to check the contrast for those level of conformities, be a AA, AAA, depending on the size. We will be taking a look into that, but yeah, furthermore, I want to just ask everyone, what do they use currently in their own projects and in their GSOC projects as well, or it could be just anything in general in the terms of accessibility or usability, something like that. So anyone, if you want to just elaborate on the points.
So our outreach project this year was to get as many of our tools, WCAG, if not fully compliant, more compliant. We're going to run in, like, we're kind of doing low-hanging fruit first, and eventually we get to the problem where it's the HTML5 interactive whole slide image, and we're not currently sure how we're going to solve that, but we got to talk to people.
Yeah.
And something I wanted to bring up is about, like, we're talking about design-related things, about personas, user stories, or whatever the vogue term is for that kind of user modeling. I typically, like, I mean, step 0 is to try it yourself, but then you have to verify them. Is especially like people mental models. I talked with someone who was a data scientist, worked on, calling the visualizations is incorrect, but audio graphs. And it was super interesting, and as a result, completely blind, had an entirely different idea or mental concept for these, I want to call them visualizations so bad because I can't think of a better word for them, but non-visual visualizations. And if you're not curious enough to find this thing, you'll end up kind of inevitably, and you will, I think, you will repeatedly end up accidentally reinforcing your own biases, and you have to constantly fight that.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
go ahead. So, I found that very interesting, as you said, about the order in which the screen reader reads the page, because to make it more eye-catchable or easier to read, we put headline in the middle, and then there is some text at the above, and below that there's some description, and then there are different HTML tags to do that. So, so are screen readers equipped to read it in that way when how the designers has meant for a visual user, or do we need to configure them, or does anyone know how does that work?
Okay, so I will just be giving a very, I would say a very raw HTML semantic, and it may be that if you're using some framework, then you will have to just see how you can incorporate this. So if you have something, then you should be first having something called a skip link. That should be at the very top. So it's just that when you want to go to the main content, and every page has something like a hero section or something that every time is being read by the screen reader, then a person would not like it after some time who is just using that. So just having a skip to the main content, and you have seen many websites just do that. So you just press tab and it just appears out of nowhere, You just press tab again, and it just takes you to the thing. And you should be just using the right semantics. I've seen people just try to do things like if you have a card, they try to make the entire card clickable by just making the whole div clickable, and it's not a good thing because the screen reader will just read out the entire thing in that. And I have read out a very good book. It is in the slide, so you don't worry about it. But you can do something like making a button here clickable, and just adding a pseudo element, which is just like you are just making it the same size as of the whole card, so the entire card becomes clickable for you. So you are not messing up the semantics, plus you are just reassuring what your designer has just made for you. So yeah, this is just one of the many things, and yeah, we'll be taking a look in that as well. So I'll just go to the next slide. And yeah, this is on neurodiversity. You can just read the whole thing on the, I will be giving you the slide, so you don't have to worry about it. And if someone would want to just talk about any of the things mentioned here, it would be very lovely, because if I talk, it will be very monotonous and you will not like my voice after some time. So, please.
Especially if anyone has ADHD.
Yeah. Okay, so you feel that everyone.
No,
Yeah.
I actually have a question. So,
Please.
Yeah, that's.
aside from the obvious ones, which are, I would say, dyslexia, although I don't know how you mitigate this in web scenario, can you, like, take us through these and, like, give examples of how accessibility sort of facilitates?
Yeah. So the first thing you said was how dyslexia or just having troubles with letters, words.
Yeah, here you have typing that could improve it, like choosing the right fonts, for example.
Yeah. So there is a thing that you will have to choose something like a humanist font, and you will have to design it in a way that person would be able to feel that it is more legible. So you have some fonts that have this kind of L, and it has some kind of I, and it has some kind of 1, and they all look the same. And it is a problem. It is a problem not if you know the whole word, but it is a problem, let's say, if it is a code, and it can be a problem in words as well. So just try to pick up something like a humanist font. And there is another thing. So let's say I was designing a thing for payment, and it was like a credit card, I would say, text box, and I gave it to one of my developers, because who as a senior wants to code himself, so yeah, just give it to a developer. So there was this thing that he made a text box. He just made an input field with a number and just the numeric keypad, the normal things. But when you just enter the numbers, they were just all closed, and it was for your credit card. So I told him, why not just space it after every 4? He said that it would be a lot of work, I don't want to do that. So there's this thing, you don't want people who yeah just leave it, yeah, just ship it, you just approve my pull request. So yeah, it doesn't work like that. You will have to take into accountability that some designs are made to be, I would say, more related to the real world things, and they are made so that they are understandable by all. They would look like, yeah, I can understand it, but yeah, for everyone, you may have seen sometimes the phone numbers get formatted in a very good way, and sometimes it does not. So many people are not doing it right, many people don't want to do it right, many people are just not managing it right, but you will have to just do the right thing in the rightful way. And this is just one of the examples. I would want you to read that link, I would give it to you. And there are many types of things here, but there is one more thing I want to mention, which is especially to the Liquid Galaxy community. If you know that we do things on Google Earth and Google Maps, we just make something like a big panoramic screen, and you can control it using your phone, or you can just use something called a space navigator. So a space navigator looks like a joystick. It's like a device that you have to hold and control it. But not only that, it is expensive. It's like 600 euros to, no, less.
The Space Navigator?
Yes, Space Navigator.
120.
But for India it was 600 when I was
Oh.
trying to buy it. So yeah,
Oh.
it was
Yes,
expensive.
that is something.
Oh.
Yeah, so I wouldn't want to buy it. And the other thing was that if someone has like arthritis or something that he is not able to just hold it well, then he will be facing a problem. So there must be a solution in user experience that could bring out the best in accessibility. So you have that, you can use something called, we did a project, it was called the Super Liquid Galaxy Controller, to use multiple ways to do that. So there is a thing called the Google Game Face, which is like 461 data points on your face. So someone who has something like a paralysis below the neck, he can just use his face to control Google Earth. And we were able to achieve these things, and as well as using some TensorFlow pre-available touch controls to be able to just use your I would say your whole body to just make some movements to you control Google Earth. So yeah, these are some of the things and some of the ways. Also, not to mention that, not forget to mention that the touch screen controls just using in your app, so you don't have to hold something, and you can just use your Google Maps to just move to places to control Google Earth, which is very fantastic, to be honest. So yeah, there are multiple types of things and there are multiple cases, and whenever you hear from a user experience, I would say any person, then he would say it depends. It depends on the product, that how what you want to do. And there was a meme like a person who is it was shared by a UX director at the Zurich office at Google, and he just we were talking to each other, and he just said that he made a parrot that was at a meme, and he just said it depends. The parrot was saying it depends, and he became a UX director at Google by just saying that. So yeah, that was just a meme thing. Don't just think that you can just do that in interviews and get to that place. So please, yeah. So yeah, we already talked about, if someone else wants to just talk something else, please feel free to do so. Any questions if someone has, because it would be just, I don't want to just occupy your whole headspace with what I'm saying. So, okay. So yeah, this thing of scanning, modeling, and satisficing, I have seen that it is not just for the people who are like, it is not just for us. If we are reading a newspaper, the people who would have are reading through a screen reader are also not, they don't want to read the whole thing. They would be just jumping the headings, jumping the content. They want to also muddle through it. They just want to get to the part that they love to read, and they will just stick to that particular thing that they would want to read. And there is a very good book called the Don't Make Me Think. It is a book on common sense, which I believe is not so common at the moment. How developers are just doing some of the websites that don't look so accessible. So yeah, just do check it out. It just tells a lot about accessibility, user experience, and some things in general. So, and yeah, if anyone just wants to talk about his project which was not accessible, or he feels just after this whole conversation that might not be accessible, because I think that we should just look at the other way if people are not talking. So it might be that you made something that you feel is not accessible, please feel free to talk about it, because everyone started like that. So
Accessibility is ultimately some kind of a spectrum. You have to, at some point, decide who you're designing for, and there's, I guess, the bell curve is a vast simplification. But yeah, if you're trying to just generally make something accessible, I think you end up missing a lot of specific use cases.
yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I would say it's a forever going thing with your applications. It's just user experience and things like that, they never end. You just have to keep iterating over it, keep iterating over it. You may find something. Yeah, please do. Yeah, please.
So, my project is PG routing. It's about routing. I already participated in a project in Hiawasse no Mura, in Kobe. Never been there. Oh no, yes, I've been there, but not to that park. It's a park for the elderly, and it has hospitals, any kind of hospitals, the road, the paths with the dots for the blind and stuff. So it's a routing application for them. And where I'm going to is not only the application, you need the data. They had to send a crew of people to even measure the angle of the ramp, the width of the ramp. because you have a wide wheelchair, it doesn't fit here, or to make sure that the application that is going to give you instructions in loud voice will tell you to the left there is a bench, to the right there is a fountain. You can sit on the edge of the fountain. So that can be done because of the data. So it's not only the algorithm that has to process that, it's also the quality of the data.
Definitely, definitely. You just have to make things, and it is not just the data. You have to just design it right from the very beginning. The next
Yash.
thing, please.
Yeah, I just have one thing that we learned from the researchers we're working in is that anything is better than nothing. So that means even if you make a small, very small step on your web application, on your program, on whatever you do, even if it sounds like a triviality, this little bit helps people. So the HTML we are shipping in archive has still a huge amount of problems. We have an easy report button, we have tens of thousands of reports. It just takes ages to fix all this. But it's like, okay, at least we can read 90% or 80%, and this is better. This is like, with a small step, you can reach many more people and achieve much more. It's not a accessible or not accessible. It's, as you mentioned before, it's a spectrum, and any small step helps a lot. And so that's why everyone should do that just a little bit only, and that would be already a great step forward.
Yeah, definitely. Anything that you can do, just anything that you may think that can make it more accessible, just search about it and just do it. Just don't just wait for someone to just tell you about it, and you may find that some people are finding it easier after you have done it. So that's really good. I do want to ask you if someone has any favorite books and I would want to hear, because I do feel that these books that I have right now, many of them have been just launched in 2024, except the Don't Make Me Think one. And it's a very outstanding book by Steve Brook. It's the #1 best-selling in UX. But yeah, if someone just has anything, any books that they have read in a recent time, could be just anything. Just feel free to just talk about it. Not necessarily. Yeah. So no one reads books.
I'm sure maybe everyone's the wrong word, but I'm sure people have read The Design of Everyday Things.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like the classic introduction to design affordances, like design thinking, that kind of thing. I always find it funny, he's talking as like, yeah, and there's this computer thing, and people are like starting to figure out design for it. It's kind of like a weird, I was trying to find, there was a very specific book that someone very strongly recommended. It's like, cool, he's only so-so on equity. So there was a book that people recommend, it may have been one of these, but I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah. If you find it, just let us know. And yeah, so these 3 books, I will be just talking a bit about them. So if you are interested, you can just later look at it, because you guys have not been reading books. Santa Claus will not be happy for you. So you'll not be getting gifts because you don't read books.
Science fiction books, yes.
Fiction, yeah, please.
Science fiction.
Science fiction books, yeah.
Lots of fun.
Still good. Still you get something. So yeah, the first one is the Web Accessibility Cookbook. It is just directly straight to the point. The writer doesn't waste any time in just convincing users that they should make things accessible. It is just directly telling you what semantics to use, what are the anti-patterns that people use but should not use, and what type of chronicles you will face if you just do some, I would say, high number tab indexing all over your website to just think that you are making things right, but you're not. So, and
I can recommend visiting a few Japanese websites while reading such a book.
Yeah.
Because then you have counter examples to everything that is written there.
Yeah. You may have the
Like good old Yahoo websites or so, but they are still so. I mean, I live in Japan, so most of the Japanese websites are really horrible. I mean, like graphical buttons without alt text and like lots of flashing and like a huge density of information. So it's like, yeah, if you want to enjoy reading this book with an antithesis, just look up some nice pages.
Yeah.
Japanese newspaper pages are a good example.
They are very good example if you just want to compare. So yeah, the Japanese website, they have a thing like maximalism. So there would be like everything at once, and you'll be just facing everything at once. It'll be just too much for you. But yeah, some websites have this minimalism, which is like very contrary to it, and it maybe it depends on the design for whom you want to make. I've heard that someone made a minimalistic website for the Japanese community and they didn't like it. They just stick to what they love. It's in their culture. They see the streets, it's all maximalism in the real world, it's maximalism on the website. So it just corresponds to them better. If someone has some experience in, I would say, user experience in some product that they find good to use, very easy, like I find this bottle very good, it just opens for me so well. I don't, and yeah, anything. It's not just you have to look for websites. It could be a product. It could be a product design that has so good user experience. So if anyone just wants to talk,
I want to talk about the Kindle.
yeah, sure. Just market it.
Because I read lots of books. I'm not going to recommend because I don't know what people like here, but my user experience with Kindle is amazing because you can. I love that you can make it the letters big or small as you make, and I know you can write in the light or not. So for me, this is a very good design product.
You have a paperback?
It's the Oasis, but it's similar, and it's also it's so well thought that I cannot live without it now.
Is it like black and white or is it a color?
It's black and white. I heard there's
I
one-
do have.
Yeah.
I think mine is not the Oasis, but yeah, it's just so, I would say, easy to read on the Kindle. It just doesn't strain your eyes if you are just reading for a long time. It's just better if you are on a flight and you just want to read it. Yeah, we can send this video to Jeff Bezos. He might just give us some incentive. So the next thing is the design for impact. It's by Aaron Weigel. It is that you should try to think of designs as an unbiased design that you have made for your website might bring out better results than something that has your own bias that you felt is right. So I will just talk about this guy called, I don't know.
You need to write bigger.
Yeah, I need to write way bigger, and I'm way bigger now.
You need to add some alt text.
So, yeah, I would be just adding more accessibility to this. Ronald Fisher. So story time again. So there was this guy named Ronald Fisher who was given some agriculture data and he was just making a design or a product. He was a user researcher. So he was just researching onto things that can impact onto the design of a product. And he used to do a thing that he was making tea. They love to drink tea with his colleagues. And he was just pouring the he had hot water and was just pouring milk, the milk into the tea. So his colleague said, "You don't do that. You just don't have to pour milk into the tea. You pour tea. You pour milk into the tea. You just do it the other way. You just hot up the milk and you just pour the tea in it." And then they were just having an argument that they taste different if you just have a boiling hot tea and you just pour milk in it, or if you have milk and you pour tea in it. And after some thought, Ronald Fisher said, the order doesn't matter. The way I pour it, it doesn't matter. So they were just quarreling about it, but because they were user researchers and they were not us to just make a duel or fight about it, so they decided that they would be making an unbiased test. So here it is that they made 8 cups of milk in tea and 8 cups of tea in milk. And they just randomized it. You do not know which one is what, so there is no bias now. You just have to drink and just figure out. And later we checked, they had something written on the bottom if it is a type 1 or type 2. And one of it drinks it and they found out they guessed all of it right. And The other guy was just finding, so yeah, there is a chemical reaction that happens. It is different, and it was just later figured out. So they were just trying to see that why did it happen. They were just trying to calculate the probability that that happened. It was like something like they were just amazed that there is a difference, and Ronald Fisher just got to know from this particular team thing that all the data that he has doesn't make sense. It was all biased data that he was getting, so he was not able to figure out a good thing for his product, a good design for his product. So every time you are accounting for a data, and I'll be talking about it in a more technical way too, if you want. Obviously, if you don't want to hear me, I can just shut up and you can talk. But he did figure out that an unbiased data can make things much more better in user experience, which also includes much more better accessibility. Sometimes we just think that what our cognitive thinking it, and we don't just practice this thing called cognitive distancing from your own product. We just try to bias it out, try to think, yeah, I know this may work, but you don't really know that. You have to think from everyone's side. There's this diversity, there's this inclusivity, so you have to care about it. So yeah, if someone just want to talk about it, if someone finds the story nice, so there's okay, so one guy finds the story nice, two guys. Those who didn't find the story nice. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, is this about usability tests? You come up with the user experience and give results to people, test and evaluate how obvious everything was, and you figure out if they noticed some certain interactions and give them a quiz afterwards.
I would say usability test is very important. Yeah, and this one was more of an A/B test. So there was an A and there was a B, and they were just trying to figure out things in that. And you do know that A/B testing is like really important to figure out what is, I would say, giving you a good metric on your product. So for YouTube, they had this thing that you may have seen. YouTube doesn't have a count for dislikes. You don't have it right now. So they made something like an A group and a B group to figure out that if we have this variant and the experiment groups and we have no confounds in it, I will talk about confounds. So and they just figured out that people who see that more dislikes are existing, they just think of it as a bad experience on the all over of the app. So they just removed it, and that was the result of one of the A/B tests that was unbiased, much like the Ronald Fisher experiment that was so much unbiased. So yeah, there is this unbiasing. And if someone has done any A/B testings, and if someone just wants to talk about it, or just any usability testings, anything in general.
Well, A/B testing is a huge topic.
Yeah, it's a huge topic of its own.
I've done this for a huge.
Yeah.
One of the biggest companies in Japan. This
Yeah.
is, I mean, A/B testing is really hard, and but it gives you what you mentioned, insights. I mean, the most famous is probably the case of the switching the search to have bold text marked up that was pushed back by upper management for 7 years or 6 years, and then within 3 months created billions of more income at Google. So that was, at Bing, sorry. Yeah, so A/B testing is a good thing to do, but it is not trivial. Especially because you see unbiased A/B testing, this is one of the most difficult things to get right. So user randomization is not enough, because normally every company runs multiple A/B tests, and you have certain cross effects. You have to be very careful. So I strongly recommend having a good statistician working on the A/B tests. There's a very good book from the god of A/B testing that I can recommend.
Sure.
Like,
So,
just
yeah.
keep ethics in mind, like respect for persons. You don't do anything that is going to cause harm. I think we haven't talked about extraneous cognitive load, especially people with disabilities, either neurodivergence or use of screen readers. There is an additional set of cognitive load that is not task related they must keep in mind. So when you're designing a test, just don't make it evil. I guess that's the best way to put it. If
Yeah.
Google won't say it, I will.
Well, normally you test something you think this is good for your website, right?
So I think we are just very short on time, so I will just be thinking one of the things that is probably
Yash,
there.
I wanted to know about the third book. The
You
most
want to know
important.
about the third book? Okay.
The most
Okay.
important
we
one.
can do that. It is a very important
Because-
book. It is something that Steve Krug has published, and it was also the #1 best-selling book on user experience. It is called the "Don't Make Me Think" to build common sense into your work, into your websites, application, whatever, to make it so straightforward, which is called the Krug's law of usability, that you shouldn't be thinking twice. So you shouldn't be doing something like this job submit, and I hope I'm writing it big now. So there is this job submit button that you could have made as a button, you could have made it as a link, you could have made it as a text which was somewhere between your paragraphs, or you could have just made it a button but you have written something like a job or Rama thing or something that you just use in your own vocabulary and someone does not understand it. So it's more about how you can build things that are easier for someone to understand by not building a cognitive load into them. You should not be focusing on your own internal vocabulary. I've seen many, even at my own company, we use some term called tech evolve, which is nothing but your app services. So just try to build things that are easy for someone to understand, remember, and read. I think we are out of time now. If you like this session, just
The books are on the notes. Some of the things you link to, I've found links for, but I do not have a link to your slides, which I assume you want to give.
I will be giving the link. I'll just write my email here. It's a very short one. I made a very short one. Yeah, because yesterday I had the longest email that you could.
DICZ
So it's DICZ9A and @gmail.
9A.
Let me just make sure it's 9A or not. It should be. I don't want you to just mailing a. Yeah, it's DIZZ9A. So
Are you okay with your email being in the notes for this meeting?
you can do that. So you just email me. I will just send you this book, or I can just automate things so it just sends by default.
Every time anyone emails